time to make some bold predictions for the 2024 season. Today, we're doing every single team in the AFC. If you didn't see our NFC video about this topic, go check out our last upload. Starting things off with a division which possesses the reigning, unchallenged, unquestionable Super Bowl champion, the Kansas City Chiefs, the AFC West. And just looking at the Chiefs, this is not going to sound like a bold prediction initially, but then you gotta think about it, because this is finally going to be the year the Chiefs do not go back to the AFC Championship game. And oh, only 2 teams go each year, whatever. The Chiefs have gone each of the past 7 seasons. They've appeared in the AFC Championship game, won it most of the time, gone on to the Super Bowl. But this is the year I finally think someone knocks them off in the divisional round. I think the AFC is deep enough. I think the defenses have gotten better. I think the Chiefs team is just worse than they were last season. I don't have much faith in Xavier Worthy. I don't have much faith in Rashee Rice coming back anytime soon. I think that locker room is just getting older, more divided. It's just going to be a mess. That being said, they're still going to make the division around the playoffs because they're that good and have that much high in talent. But we're finally going to see 2 new teams in the AFC Championship game.
I noticed how when you were downplaying the Chiefs roster, downplaying their receivers, you didn't mention the 3rd receiver on their team, who I think is going to be the best receiver on their team this season, regardless if Rashee Rice misses 6 games. Marquise Brown has never played in this level of a passing offense. Has he played with great quarterbacks? Yes, he got to play with Lamar Jackson. And in a Ravens-led offense that is heavily run dominant, as we all know, whether it's been Tyler Huntley or Lamar Jackson taking snaps, he was very productive. Last few years, Kyler Murray has dealt with a lot of injuries, which I think has significantly hampered his production there. So this year, with the best quarterback in the NFL by a wide margin, the best offensive mind in the NFL by a wide margin, and a offense that likes to pass the ball as much as the Chiefs do, I think we are going to see Marquise Brown reestablish himself. I'm not going to say top 20 or top 10 receiver or something arbitrary like that, but I think we're going to see him establish himself as a clear number 1 receiver in an offense where he's going to put up 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns.
Okay, so you're going to say, oh, he's putting up 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns. You're not going to call him a top 20 receiver. I don't know about that one. And
well,
also, the only thing by a wide margin we're going to talk about with Andy Reid is his waistline. There's a reason Hollywood Brown put up the numbers he did with Kyler Murray on the Arizona Cardinals. Even when Kyler Murray was healthy, Hollywood Brown was not putting up those numbers. He was much more of a Bollywood Brown than a Hollywood Brown in Arizona. There's a reason he's on the Chiefs now. He's the reason he's being considered their 3rd option at wide receiver. I don't think that one's going to go too well.
You're the only one considering him their 3rd
I'm the only one considering. If Rashee Rice plays, he's clearly number 1. Travis Kelce, not a wide receiver, but clearly top 2 receiving threat. And they used a 1st-round pick on Xavier Worthy.
We've seen rookie wide receivers on the Chiefs
like Rashee Rice
not get as many opportunities, especially early in the season. And if we have Marquise Brown producing how I think he will early in the season, and Rashee Rice, if he's playing, coming off of last season, I think we're going to see Xavier Worthy more in that 3rd receiver role.
Go ahead and draft Hollywood Brown in our fantasy leagues. I will gladly support that move you make. 1,300 yards, 1,200 yards, it's just not happening. But what is going to happen is Gardner Minshew is going to transform that Raiders offense, because they got a fine offensive line, they've got a fine coaching staff, and they've got Devontae Adams, they got Jacoby Myers, they got Michael Mayer, and now they have Brock Bowers, 2 of the most hyped tight end prospects in the past few drafts. They've got them both. They've got a Hall of Fame receiver, and they've got a solid wide receiver too. With Minshew at the helm, he is going to supplant Aiden O'Connell within the first 3 weeks of the season, probably even in training camp. That is going to be a top 10 passing attack in the NFL. The Raiders are going to light it up compared to what they did last season through the air. Minshew Mania is alive in the city of sin.
Unfortunately, I think this is another one where we mostly agree on the team and their situation. I don't really get the hate the Raiders are getting. I don't really get their betting line this season where it's minus 144 over 6.5 wins. You take a look at what the Raiders dealt with last year. Head coach fired in the middle of the season. Now they have continuity at head coach, a coach that players like Antonio Pierce, and whether it's Aiden O'Connell taking snaps at quarterback, whether it's Gardner Minshew who steps in there, Aiden O'Connell's going to have more experience. Gardner Minshew at least raises your team's floor significantly. And last year, with everything that was going on that I already named, they won 8 games. So they're in a division with a team like the Broncos, who's got a lot going on. You have the Chargers, who have a brand new head coach, and we all believe in Harbaugh, but they've had a lot of players leave, a lot of new players come in. I think we may see them lose some games that over the next 3 years, they're not going to lose. So I think the Raiders, they're going to win 8, 9, 10 games would be a little rich for me, but I definitely think they're going to get over their current projected betting win total.
I mean, that's not that odd of a take. The line's really low. Be brave. Say 12. Say
12.
Say Minshew made it.
You can't even say that with a straight
Minshew made
face.
it gets them to 14-0. To start the season, they start resting starters once the first round bye's been secured. Imagine rolling into the playoffs with a 1-month bye. Ugh, can't wait to see it from Gardner Minshew. Anyway, over in Denver, Mile High City, Bo Nix was a heavily criticized pick for good reason. But looking around the landscape of the NFL and what the Broncos were last season, I think there's a pretty real chance he finishes second in the Offensive Rookie of the Year race. Right around there. Now, it's not some claim that, oh, he's going to be QB2 for years to come. It's just you look at everyone else. Caleb Williams going to play in Chicago, not a quarterback-friendly environment. I know he's got a lot of help, but I'm not high on him. Michael Penix, J.J. McCarthy, Drake Maye, all not going to play early in the season, excluding them from that conversation. And the Commanders have a terrible offensive line, which is going to greatly hinder Jaden Daniels. He might be able to overcome that. He might not. If he doesn't, I'm sure another wide receiver will put up 1,200 yards as a rookie and get in this conversation. But with Bo Nix, with Courtland Sutton, with Josh Reynolds, who is the wide receiver 2 on a team which was in the NFC Championship game, with a good old line, with Sean Payton, who likes quarterbacks in Bo Nix's style, who will take the check down and stay in the effing pocket, and Marion Mims, who was a Pro Bowler last season, I think there's a pretty real chance he's in that O'Roy conversation. I have more faith in Bo Nix from a rookie standpoint than many other quarterbacks.
Well, Marvin Mims was in the Pro Bowl for a returner, not for being a receiver.
Okay, so you want the ball to be in Marvin Mims' hands.
And unfortunately, again, we are kind of agreeing again.
Can you improvise something here?
I'm not. You can read my notes are
Say
right
Marion
here.
Mims is going to get cut. Say Javonte Williams is going to have 40 rushing touchdowns.
I think Bo Nix is going to be right up there as one of the best statistical years, one of the best overall rookie years from this class. Because if Sean Payton was able to get 26 touchdowns and 8 interceptions out of Russell Wilson last year, who we saw him screaming at him on the sideline. Russell Wilson couldn't get the play calls out of his mouth, and he's getting a rookie quarterback who I think is more athletically gifted than people give him credit for. We know he has a good arm. He played 61 games as a starter in college. Sean Payton's going to get the most out of him. So we all think Mac Jones stinks now, but his rookie year was also incredible. Incredible, it was very good. Very solid. People were saying he should have been picked, Patriots fans specifically, should have been picked over Trevor Lawrence. Bo Nix, he's going to have a very good rookie year that's going to leave people wondering why he wasn't picked earlier, but I'm not necessarily projecting that out over the course of his career.
Unoriginal take as ever. Finally, with the Chargers.
I think I need to go first now.
Well,
so
I
you
guarantee you're not going to have the same take I do about the Chargers. It's Quentin Johnston season. It has been Quentin Johnston.
Are you kidding me?
That is on you. That is on you. I'm the one who's been pounding this desk for months about how good Quentin Johnston's going to be next season.
I feel like you just copied my notes.
Find something else than that one. This is an Isaiah Ashley
You
take.
hacked into my Google Drive.
You have staked your claim to this one. You don't have the praise of Quentin Johnston. You think he's a bust. Man, I'm sick of you, man. I'm sick of you.
Go on.
We might have to edit this so we start with like the AFC East or something so we don't just agree with each other. I hate agreeing with you, man. I hate that you have formed cognizant opinions. Man, what are we even doing here? Oh, Quentin Johnston's going to have 1,200 yards as the wide receiver 1. Yeah, we're both
That's not my take.
Oh, what's your take?
No, you go with your take.
Quentin Johnston, wide receiver 1, 1,300 yards, Pro Bowler, revitalizes his career. Jim Harbaugh plays that sweet chin music on the rest of the division with Quentin Johnston and Jay Herbo. He's the guy.
I'm not sure if you just turned it up a notch because
Why would I turn it up a notch? He's going to have the same numbers as Keenan Allen did last year as the Chargers wide receiver 1.
See, I think that is absurd. That part of the take thinking, I don't think Quentin Johnston is ever going to be that elite game-changing threat that we see in a Jamar Chase, a Cooper Kupp, a Justin Jefferson. I don't think we are ever going to see that out of him. I don't think he's good enough of a route runner. I don't think he has good enough hands to make that happen. But what I do think about him is that Jim Harbaugh gets the most out of the players he has on his roster that season. He was witness to one of Quentin Johnston's best games he's ever had in college when he went for, I think, was it 6 and 160 against Michigan? Something along those lines. So he knows just how good QJ is in person, and once he utilizes his skill set, he's going to put up 800 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's not going to dominate and be this next level game-changing threat, but he is more than capable of at being a key piece of an offense.
You were literally, first off, aside from that little conclusion you came to, the Jim Harbaugh witnessing firsthand, you were literally just parroting what I've been saying the past months about what Harbaugh's going to do with Johnson. Second off, I'm not saying he is some Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson guy, because frankly,
you just said he's going to have 1,300 yards.
Is not Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson level stuff. Justin Jefferson put up 1,000 yards and played half the season. There are levels to this. He's not on their level, but he's the one right below it with about 10 other guys you'd consider elite.
That's not happening.
It's not happening? Okay, well, I'm sorry we can't have the bold take that, oh, a team's wide receiver 2 is going to have 800 yards. Shocking, brave, courageous.
Okay.
On down to the AFC South. And last year's winner of the South, the Houston Texans, had some big upgrades this offseason. We know the 2 obvious ones. We know what the expectations are for this team going into the year. But someone not enough people are talking about is Joe Mixon, who is going to be a top 3 rusher in the NFL next season. And I can explain why. First off, 1,000 yards, somewhat efficient by that terrible Bengals offensive line in 2023. They knew they were going to be running more. They stacked the box. They let Jake Browning have his way through the air, and Joe Mixon was still a 1K rusher. You look at what the Texans had last year with Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary toting the rock for. Mixon is a clear upgrade. He's going to get the same number of carries, if not more. He's going to be more efficient by a better offensive line, and teams are not going to be able to crowd the box against Joe Mixon, meaning he is going to have more room to run and operate in the open field. More room than he has had at any point in his career, to be frank. The injury concerns are not present for him. He's only missed 4 games in the past 3 seasons. That's not substantial. I have a lot of faith in Joe Mixon next season to be a 1,500 yard rusher for the Texans.
Well, I am not that high on Joe Mixon, and when it comes to him specifically, I think he's a little overrated by the general NFL fan base. He's never been an incredibly efficient runner. He's not the most explosive running back in the world, but when it comes to the Texans next season, I love how their offensive pieces, how many good offensive pieces they have and how they complement each other. They have a very good tight end. They have Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, who was phenomenal last season. They have 3 guys who could be the #1 receiver in many offenses around the league.
What offense is using Tank Dell as their #1 wide receiver?
#1 receiving threat? It can happen. Anyway.
Yeah, for the Giants.
Okay, Malik Neighbors hater.
Malik Neighbors, hey, it's the Daniel Jones thrower, which is the issue, but anyway.
We won't get into that. But their defense, I think it's only gotten better since last season, personnel-wise, especially with Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson. I'm a big fan of that pairing. And then I just mentioned all the offensive pieces. You have CJ Stroud in year 2. Their head coach, another year in his defensive system. They were able to retain their offensive coordinator. CJ Stroud, he's going for 5,000 yards, and the Texans are winning 14 games.
Oh, that's all. I would have said Super Bowl with the type of billing you were giving him.
We're only talking about the regular season.
I think the 5,000, we were talking about everything here.
They're going to the Super Bowl.
There you go. Good job. Good job. Good job. I think the 5,000 yards is a bit rich for my blood because, again, they're going to have a 1,500 yard rusher. That's neither here nor there. On down to the Colts. And the Colts were very close to making the playoffs last year. I don't think many people appreciate that. 9-win team. Very competitive at points. And now they have seemingly gotten better this offseason. They've gotten healthier. They added good players in the draft. And you know what? I don't care. I think they're going to win less games, which is maybe not that high of a take since I think the betting line's 8.5. But the general consensus about this Indianapolis Colts team is they're going to be a dark horse. They're going to be one of those plucky teams out of the AFC to challenge the Texans for their division, to make the playoffs. I don't see it. And it's nothing against Anthony Richardson. I hate being grouped in with some of his most vocal critics, but in his 4 starts in the NFL, I did not see anything which could convince me he was capable of leading a high-powered offense. Clearly athletically gifted, still incredibly raw, incredibly unrefined, and nothing I've seen out of training camp has changed my opinion on that. I have to wait and see for sure before I put any faith in Richardson, and it's just not going to happen in the preseason, which is why I am way lower on them than some people with a more creative imagination than myself are.
Well, when you see a player get hurt that early into their career with an injury to their shoulder and they play quarterback and they've also had some other injuries bang them up, you really want to see another full season of them starting, play healthy, and play the entire year. So anyone that says Anthony Richardson's health isn't at least a concern at this point in his career, they're just flat out lying to you, because he doesn't have a ton of starts under his belt like a Bo Nix. Bo Nix has played way more games than Anthony Richardson has, outside of the fact that Anthony Richardson has 4 more professional starts than him.
Slight difference.
And a season in a professional organization, which
they're paying those guys well up at Oregon, I'll tell you that.
And when it comes to the Colts and how many games they'll win this season, I could kind of see what you're saying just because of how good the AFC is. I mean, the AFC North specifically, we probably agree that's the best division in football. The
NFC North?
The NFC North. The AFC North is also very good, though.
They're all right, but
there's a lot of good teams in the AFC. You could see 2 wildcard teams coming out of the AFC North. In the AFC South, you also have the Jaguars, who we haven't talked about. So when it comes to them only winning 8 games, I could definitely see that happening. But what I think we will see from the Colts this season is I am a believer in Anthony Richardson. And let's just say he stays healthy. And that is a big if, because we haven't seen it quite yet in his career. I think he is going to be very productive with Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, Adonai Mitchell, Josh Downs. Alec Pierce is still down there as the 4th option. I think we're going to see him throw for close to 4,000 yards, 650 rushing yards, if he stays healthy. And that is a big if. But when it just comes to how competitive the AFC is and the Colts defense, I'm not quite sure if they're going to make that playoff push.
I think you're really wrong with the stats. If he stays healthy, it's going to be something more like 3,000 through the air and 1,000 on the ground. Something like a hopefully less turnover-prone Justin Fields was 2 seasons ago. I don't see him throwing for 4,000 yards. I think that's really unrealistic and an unfair expectation to put on him. Speaking for throwing for 4,000 yards, though, Tennessee Titans. Last year, bottom 10 passing offense, threw for around 3,500 yards. This year, they're putting another 1,000 on top of that. They're going to be a top 10 passing offense. They're throwing for 4,500 yards, and they're going to be a much more complete team offensively. Losing Derrick Henry hurts, but they've made the O-line better, and that receiving room is unrecognizable. Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, D-Hop, Treylon Burks, that is a really good receiving room. It's an older receiving room. There may be injury concerns, but that is a talented group. If Will Levis has any ability to be an NFL quarterback, it will be put on display this year. And he's got upside, he's got the arm talent. I think he'll be a little bit more refined, less turnover prone, less Brett Favre-ian in his 2nd season. I think that leads to a very productive passing attack. He's also going to have a lot more opportunities to throw, given they're not going to be force-feeding Derrick Henry the ball, which will help his stats individually. Might not help the team out all that much, but you never know. But much better passing offense.
I am glad there's something we finally vehemently disagree on, because the Titans, they're going to have the 1st overall pick next year, and the way they've handled their last few seasons with Mike Vrabel being out of the building, it's been downhill since they traded A.J. Brown for Treylon Burks, who's now the 4th wide receiver on their depth chart. And in a desperate attempt to make their offense relevant, they let Derrick Henry walk. They brought in Tony Pollard, who seemed to have lost any juice he had last season and was not capable of being the number 1 back in the Cowboys offense. And they're adding these old receivers to try and save their quarterback, who only likes to throw the ball deep and into trouble, and wasn't exactly overly accurate last season. So I think the Titans are going to be certainly the worst team in the AFC South, and they're going to be the worst team in the NFL next season.
What do you have against Will Levis? Because that sounded personal. That is a personal attack we have straight into the territory of. He likes to throw the ball deep. Did you see the video, or do you have some envy of Will Levis? Is this jealousy talking? He's got a quick release, man. Come on.
No, completely wrong. It is more hate for the Titans organization and distaste with how ownership and how that front office has handled things.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Vrabel, clearly such a great coach.
Mike Vrabel, you can't even get his name right?
Which is why would I get his name right? He's unemployed. He could be a guest on the Thick Man Inc. podcast. He wouldn't be taking anything out of his busy day. There's a reason he does not have a head coaching job, Tristan. He's not the head coach you're cracking him up to be. It was time they move on from him. It was time they move on from Henry. Maybe they don't have a great season, but first overall pick, no. There are so many worse teams out there. Speaking of worse teams, the Jacksonville Jaguars. No, I'm not calling the Jacksonville Jaguars the worst team in football. I do think, though, at the end of next season, they are not going to offer Trevor Lawrence the same contract that Detroit Lions offered Jared Goff. I don't think they are willing to dish out over $50 million for Trevor Lawrence. Granted, they may not have many better options. They may be forced into it, but I just don't see it happening. I don't see Shad Khan opening his change purse and giving a quarterback who has proven very little from a winning standpoint that type of money. And do I think Trevor Lawrence is a bad quarterback? No. This prediction is coming purely from the standpoint of that is an incompetent organization who does not appreciate what they have in T-Law. It's clear they don't appreciate what they have in T-Law. That's why they have failed to build him an offensive line the past 3 seasons. That's why they brought in Urban Meyer to coach him his rookie season. They don't get how good Trevor Lawrence is, and that's going to be reflected when it comes to contract negotiations. Does that wind up with him playing on the tag, holding out, walking? Who knows? But I don't think he's going to get Jared Goff money.
I think you probably think more highly of Trevor Lawrence than I do. I definitely think he's going to wind up getting that money next season because we're going to be another year into the salary cap increasing even more, and he's certainly going to at least get Jared Goff type money, which what's going to happen with the Dak contract, who also is going to get an extension. So I certainly think he's going to get that type of money. But when it comes to this season specifically, I don't think they are as good as the Texans, but I think they're going to be an 11-12 win team, and the biggest part of this, of why I believe this, is because of, I've said it in other videos, how their offensive pieces complement each other. They're going to have Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram be able to dominate the middle of the field. They have an excellent running back in Travis Etienne, and they just added a 6'4" receiver who runs a 4.3 and is going to dominate on the outside. Brian Thomas is going to have multiple 50-plus yard touchdowns this season. They are going to really be able to air it out with him, and I think he's going to have another 1,200 yards to go with it. Not going to dominate with maybe the most yards or catches because I think a lot of the offense is going to run through Etienne, Christian Kirk, and Evan Ingram, but I think he's going to be the key piece to them making it to the playoffs.
I think the issue with Brian Thomas on the Jaguars, and from a weapon standpoint, it's a fine fit, but you don't really get the opportunity to throw many deep balls. You have pressure in your face 2 seconds into every play. That's going to be the thing which holds back Brian Thomas. Moving on over to the AFC East, the division Tom Brady used to own and is now currently possessed by Josh Allen. And the thing with the Buffalo Bills, they have been maligned this offseason. They lost veteran pieces, name brand players, Stephon Diggs, their secondary, Tre'Davious White. They're going to be terrible, right? They're going to be a better passing attack in 2024, and Josh Allen is going to win his first MVP. 2 second-place finishes already, no more. Getting the first-place one. Having Diggs out of that building is going to help that offense. Khalil Shakir, great wide receiver, very versatile. Dalton Kincaid, great tight end, going to be even better in year 2. Gabe Davis, I am not worried about his departure. Curtis Samuel is much more consistent and will help the chains move a lot more. And Keon Coleman, big physical player capable of jumping up and catching balls in those frigid Buffalo skies. This is going to be a great passing attack. James Cook complementing it on the ground. The offensive line solidifying itself at that left tackle position. Josh Allen's winning MVP. This offense is lighting the league up, and I will not hear anything otherwise.
I don't know if Josh Allen will win MVP, but I am on the same page when it comes to the Bills next season. A lot of people are saying they're going to be a worse team, but I think over the last few years, their offense has been heavily centered on Josh Allen's ability to run the ball and heavily centered on the way Stephon Diggs is able to affect the defense. Now, what we saw with the Chiefs last season, they went more to an approach where the whole team is a threat. They may have not had as much high-end talent on the outside, and the Bills this season might even have more talent than the Chiefs had. They definitely have more talent than the Chiefs had at wide receiver last year. But I think we're going to see the Bills offense move more towards using every single piece and threatening you on every single level. They have Curtis Samuel, who threatens you in a different way than Keon Coleman does. They have two very solid tight ends. One in Dalton Kincaid, who is very good as a rookie, and we generally see tight ends continue to get better with each season as they progress throughout their career and get more used to the physicality of the NFL versus college. James Cook, phenomenal running back, top 10 running back in the NFL. Some people may have him in the top 5, but I think the Bills, I'm not going to go ahead and say Josh Allen's going to be the MVP, but I think they're going to be better than I see many people on social media and in the Nick Wright, who's that media than those people are expecting. Yes, ESPN, Fox.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to make any bold predictions on this episode of Bold Predictions by saying Josh Allen's going to win MVP. The Bills are going to be fine next season. On to the Patriots. And the take on this one is we are going to see Joe Milton before we see Drake Maye for New England in 2024. And I don't know what role that's going to be for Milton. Gadget play, tight end, wildcat. I don't know what it'll be, but he serves more versatility, has more value to that Patriots offense as a backup quarterback than Drake Maye does. If you need someone to come in and throw the ball around, you bring in Drake Maye. But with Jacoby Brissett, I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think we're going to see Milton packages down near the goal line. I think he is going to be a rushing threat. I think he's going to surprise some people with his arm at least once. And I know that take is probably not going to be loved by the anti-Milton crowd, but come on. He's a tremendous athlete. He will find something to do in this offense.
The Patriots, I just said how bad the Titans are. The Patriots are going to be that bad, maybe worse, maybe slightly better. They are going to be a bad team. Jerod Mayo, he is going to be the fall guy for the post-Bill Belichick era. It is hard to be the guy after that guy leaves. And I think Drake Maye, he's not going to play a game this season. They're not going to let him step on the field with all of the turmoil this organization is about to endure after moving off of the GOAT. So it's not exactly bold to say the Patriots are going to be really bad, but I don't think Drake Maye plays this season, and I think the Patriots in general.
That is in fact the exact opposite of a bold take, because they are literally the betting favorite to have the worst record in football.
And you spiced it up a little bit by saying Joe Milton gets in there first.
I didn't say anything about their record. I think we see Joe Milton used as a gadget-type player because he's a tremendous athlete. That is not being talked about enough. We're talking about Drake Maye.
We have a tight end sweep, reverse pass down the field to Kendrick Bourne.
And it'll be one of their 3 touchdowns on the season. On to the Jets. This is the first time we are going to see a team in the AFC fire a coach in the middle of the season since, I believe, Urban Meyer. I think the Saleh era is going to come to an end in spectacular fashion around week 9, week 10. I don't think it's going to be working out offensively for the Jets, whether that be due to offensive line, injuries, both, whatever. Rodgers being the vice presidential candidate for RFK, who knows what'll happen. But I don't think it's going to work. I think ownership's going to get tired of the constant underachieving. Defense will probably still be fine, but it'll be clear Saleh is not a leader of men and will get the boot before week 10.
I could see that happening. What I think is going to happen is I think Aaron Rodgers' body, he's 40 years old, it cannot withstand the demand it takes to play in the NFL anymore. I think we're going to see him get hurt at some point in the season, at least 5 weeks in. But what is the biggest difference between this Jets team and last year's Jets team? It's not the wide receiver position.
It's their backup quarterback.
Exactly. You see where I'm going with this. Last year, it was Zach Wilson. People were left questioning why Tim Boyle even had a job on an NFL roster when they saw him play. Trevor Siemian.
Well, after we saw him play, he didn't have a job on an NFL roster after a few days.
Exactly. Trevor Siemian, he snuck in a couple starts, wasn't very good. But who do they have this year? It is TYROD Taylor, who is a career backup, a very good backup at that. He broke the Bills' playoff drought when he was their starter a few years ago. So when you have a defense that is as good as the Jets' defense is, you have Breece Hall, who's another year removed from his ACL injury. You have Garrett Wilson to throw the ball to. You added Mike Williams. You added some offensive line help. TYROD Taylor is going to get that team to 10 wins.
I would prefer if you didn't refer to former Pro Bowler and Buffalo legend TYROD Taylor as a career backup. That's just me. It's not his fault Chargers medical staff tried to assassinate him. But maybe TYROD Taylor makes everything okay. Finally, for the Dolphins, and this is some nuance here you're not ready for, there is no bold prediction about the Miami Dolphins because there is no bold prediction to make. They're going to win 8 to 11 games. They've got a head coach with cool little glasses who doesn't quite work in the NFL. They have stacked wide receiver on top of wide receiver on top of wide receiver. Wide receivers don't win you Super Bowls. They're going to have to play a game in cold weather at some point, and their routes are going to get bumped off, and pressure's going to be given up, and Tua's going to get sacked and get blamed. He's going to put up big numbers at points in the regular season. Who cares? There is no take. There is nothing to talk about the Dolphins. Nothing could happen which would surprise me with this Miami team.
I have a take that you're not even ready for. If Jonnu Smith with the Falcons and Arthur Smith can have the best year of his career where he had 581 yards and was a productive member of the Falcons offense, albeit people were left scratching their eyebrow as to why Kyle Pitts wasn't getting more targets, in the Dolphins offense as the number one threat, with a running game as good as the Dolphins have with Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, they just added Jalen Wright, those receivers, and we have Mike McDaniel's offensive mind. Jonnu Smith, I think, we leave out the Falcons year. He dominated on the Titans when he was kind of an ancillary option behind Derrick Henry in the run game. Had 8 touchdowns, 451 yards, something like that. I think we are going to see an extremely good year out of Jonnu Smith. He's going to be a sneaky part of this Dolphins offense that people aren't going to really expect that much out of heading into the season, just because of all those receivers, the backfield, everything else they got going on, but I think he's going to be a big piece of the Dolphins offense in 2024.
And that big piece will lead them to win between 8 and 11 games. They'll play a cold weather game, whether that be in Buffalo down the stretch or a road playoff game. They'll lose that game. People will blame Tua. People will blame Mike McDaniels. There is no take to have with the Miami Dolphins. Jonnu Smith being a contributor as their tight end is not a take, because there is no take to have. There is nothing to talk about with the Dolphins. I'll be reiterating how little there is to talk about the Dolphins in every single future video leading up to the season. On over to the AFC North. You've got the Baltimore Ravens, the high flyers. And everyone's going to talk about, the offense now is Derrick Henry. They're going to be the best rushing offense ever with Derrick Henry and Lamar, whatever. Their pass rush is going to get better in the absence of Jadeveon Clowney. And I like Jadeveon Clowney, but his 9.5 sacks, career high, were a product of the system he was in. They're born players. They still have Kyle Van Noy. They drafted an edge rusher in the 3rd round who will be able to step in and replace Clowney from a pass rushing standpoint. They promoted a defensive coordinator from within. There is going to be no fall off at the pass rush. You may see some other areas of weakness, but between the new players, the quality of the help around them, and the secondary improvements, which do benefit the pass rush, Clowney will not be missed in that area. That part of the Ravens offseason is being drastically
overhated,
over-lamented.
I don't necessarily agree. I don't know if the Ravens defense is going to be even better than it was last year, just because it was basically the best defense in the NFL last season. But what I will say is I think this is finally going to be Rashod Bateman's breakout year. He is finally going to turn into the receiver the Ravens were expecting when they drafted him. The Ravens, they may have Nelson Aguilar on the roster, who had more receiving yards than Bateman last year, but they didn't add any receiver in the offseason. They let Odell walk away. They're expecting him to fill that role, and I think that's exactly what he's going to do. Isaiah, I'm going to flip the camera over to him quickly. He's kind of rolling his eyes.
We have been saying is Rashod Bateman's breakout season since he got drafted. Let it go, man. Let him be a comfortable wide receiver 3 over the course of his career. Stop putting these expectations on him and then being disappointed when he doesn't achieve them.
Anyone who watched the Ravens last year, I think we saw a different level of chemistry between him and Lamar Jackson that we've seen at any other point earlier in his career. I think we are going to see him break out. It's finally going to be
What, they have a
his
new
year.
post-game handshake or something? Where was they had chemistry. The chemistry didn't translate on the field, man. They can be great chums off it. They can throw the ball to each other after practice all they want. It's just not happening. He is at best the team's wide receiver 3 or receiver 3, maybe receiver 5. They're going to run the ball a ton with Derrick Henry. Get out of here, man. Unless Bateman has some new revolutionary run blocking tactic he's going to employ, this will not be a breakout season.
Hater energy coming from that side of the room.
I want to see some real hater energy. The Bengals are going to be last place in the AFC North again. 1, their offensive line didn't get all that much better by adding Trent Brown. 2, their quarterback is super injury prone. 3, they lost Tyler Boyd, who is a meaningful contributor, and their wide receiver 3. They lost DJ Reader. He is still going to be gone. He will not be immediately replaced by Chris Jenkins. Their defense got worse. They might have 2 players holding out, though I think Trey Hendricks is going to play. I think there's going to be unhappiness within that locker room. I don't think Zach Taylor is a great leader of men. I think at some point the injuries are going to mount up. The run game is also going to get much worse. Talk about, oh, Joe Mixon wasn't very efficient. Prime Adrian Peterson or Jim Brown could have been behind that Bengals interior offensive line, and they wouldn't be very efficient. When you stick in Zach Moss into that system, dear God, he's going to have about 2 yards a carry.
Not a big Chase Brown guy.
Those AFC North defenses. It's not going to go well, man. It's not going to go well. They're going to be last place in the AFC North again.
I don't think so. I'm still a believer in Joe Burrow until his throwing hand proves me otherwise, and all of a sudden he can't.
He's had a throwing arm injury too, by the way.
Unless he proves he can't grip a football like he used to, and it just looks atrocious through 4 weeks, I'm still going to believe in the Bengals offense to be very productive because I believe in the pieces they have on that offense. T. Higgins said he expects to be playing for the Bengals next season. He's not going to get traded. They added Jermaine Burton, who's going to step in to replace Tyler Boyd. I think he's going to be productive. And kind of an unsung piece that they signed in the offseason is at the tight end position. They signed Mike Geisicki, who is a very athletic tight end. In his draft class, he was the most athletic tight end. And what we've seen from Joe Burrow is make the most out of the tight ends he has on his roster. He made C.J. Uzomah a big piece of their Super Bowl run, which, real quick, C.J. Uzomah in their Super Bowl run had almost 500 yards and 5 touchdowns during the regular season. That is the only season he ever came close to having those types of numbers. So when you bring in Mike Geisicki, who's a pair of 700-yard seasons when he was on the Dolphins, and he's going to be playing alongside T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, whatever Jermaine Burton brings as a rookie, and Joe Burrow's throwing in the ball, I think he is going to be a piece that brings their passing game to another level and maybe supplements some of the production they lose, if they lose any, from Joe Mixon exiting the building.
To another level. I don't think it's going to another level first off. So that, like, another level, assuming everyone's healthy,
there's only so many yards to be had, but as far as how dynamic it is,
and the Bengals have apparently decided all of them are coming through the air because they're just not going to run the ball at all. It's not going to work out for them. Steelers, I think this is finally the year Mike Tomlin loses the locker room. And that's not me saying he's going to get fired, though he probably will not continue his contract. But after dealing with Antonio Brown, Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, after all that, after enduring the Killer Bees, after enduring Kenny Pickett, I think the combination of Russell Wilson and Justin Fields finally breaks him. I think it is going to be clear from anyone who really understands football that Russell Wilson is a better fit for that Steelers offense. But I think Justin Fields is going to be immensely popular in the locker room because the eye test is better, greater athletic ability, going to be able to put out more flashier plays. I think that is going to divide the locker room. I think Cam Hayward is currently holding out, has not been given his extension. Having a veteran leader like that out of the building for prolonged periods of time does not help anything. We know George Pickens has some issues, gave up on plays. To go from one of the most dynamic run blockers in the NFL as a wide receiver to what he was at the end of last season, bad sign. I think it all just finally comes crashing down. Loses the locker room, does not continue his employment in Pittsburgh at the end of the season, and it's just a mess.
Now, you might expect my take to be heavily centered on Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, and whatever they got going on offense because there's been a lot of turnover. But what my take is centered on is the kicking rules have changed. And are you aware who the Steelers have employed on their roster?
I'm familiar with Cordell Patterson's current employment.
Cordell Patterson is currently a Pittsburgh Steeler, and the record for touchdowns scored on a kickoff in a season is 4 in 1970 and 1967. In the year 2024, we are going to see Cordell Patterson break that record as a Pittsburgh Steeler. He's going to have 5, 6, 7, I don't know how many he's going to have because I'm not exactly sure how this rule is going to play out, but we are going to see more kicks returned for a touchdown this season. Cordell's one of the best to ever do it, and he's
the best kick returner to ever do it. Hester's a better punt returner. Cordell is the best kick returner.
We can even throw that out there. And he said the Steelers aren't going to get to 500 or above 500 because you can't go 500 with an odd number of games.
Oh, yes, you can. We believe in ties here at Thick Men Inc.
Then they're going to get to 500 if you think they're not going to get there because of Cordell Patterson returning kicks for a touchdown.
See, and before one kick is returned for a touchdown all season because NFL teams have figured out just to kick it to the 1 yard line somehow. That's the flip side of this. No one returns a kick for a touchdown. I like that prediction. You finally had one to inspire me a little bit. You're not going to like this one. The Browns are winning the AFC AFC North next year, and it's for a few reasons. One, best defense in the division. I don't think that's particularly arguable. Maybe you want to put the Ravens in there. I personally wouldn't.
Ravens defense,
they've got the best player in the division in Myles Garrett. Clearly should have more defensive player of the years than he does. I think he is the best defensive player in football if we want to get right down to it now that Donald is gone. They've got a great running back tandem in Jerome Simpson and Nick Chubb. They've got a good offensive line when healthy. And given the amount of injuries they suffered last year, I think the pendulum does swing the other way, where they can't get as unlucky with injuries 2 years in a row. It's just impossible, right? And finally, you've got Deshaun Watson. You can say, oh, not the same quarterback he was in Houston, bad quarterback, whatever. What you need to be successful in the AFC North with all those late season outdoor games is a quarterback who can manage the game and not shoot you in the foot. I think by the time we get to November, get to December, if Watson is healthy, he will be filling that role in very well. The reason the Browns lost games with Joe Flacco down the stretch is not because he was just unable to push it downfield. It's because he kept trying to. It's because he turned the ball over. It's because he was too risky with it. Just take the checkdowns, move the offensive line, let Nick Chubb and the defense win you games. That is going to win them 12, 13 games this year.
You said the Ravens defense is going to be better than it was last
year.
I
said they weren't going to be worse without Clowney.
They're going to be worse without
I said
Clowney.
They weren't going to be worse without Clowney. Doesn't mean they're going to be better.
Even if they were the best defense in the NFL last season.
They weren't. There's several defenses.
They allowed the least amount of points in the NFL.
There are many metrics which would tell you the Ravens were not the best defense. If we want to go purely based off scoring, then yeah, they were the best scoring defense. You have to take into account matchup, location, time, whatever.
We don't need to drown on about that. I'm not a big believer in the Browns' offense. I still think the Ravens are going to win the division. I'm not a big fan of Deshaun Watson. Nick Chubb coming off of that nasty knee injury last season. We'll have to see how he is coming off of that. Now, he's done it in the past, but he is an older player at this point. So I think there is a question mark there. I'm skeptical of the Browns' offense. I think the Ravens are a much more complete team. But when it comes to the Browns' defense, you said it already about Myles Garrett. He is now the best defensive player in the NFL. He's the best defensive end in the NFL. I don't care what Steelers fans have to say. We are going to see Myles Garrett win back-to-back Defensive Player of the Years. The Browns are at least going to have a top 5 defense, probably 1, 2, or 3, however that winds up playing out. But Myles Garrett going to win his second Defensive Player of the Year.
Again, the issue with that is voter fatigue. NFL media is not as bad as NBA media when it comes to that, but I could see them giving it to someone else, like a Micah Parsons, just so they're tired of going Watt, Garrett every single year. But, gotta be honest with you, there are some takes in there I did not like. We're gonna have a pretty meaningful post-game discussion on that whiteboard, do the X's and O's and break it down of how unbold some of those bold takes you had were.
Yeah.
Anyway, those were our thoughts on the AFC, some bold predictions for the 2024 season. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching. Like the video, leave us a comment, tell us who we were woefully incorrect about, and we will see you next week.